This is a quarry tile floor, our training center. We're going to show how to install Marcoat ES and GS on a newly laid tile that has no grout over here. And over here, where grout has already been put in, this is in good shape, but in an existing restaurant, the grout would be in bad shape. So we'll show you how to remove the grout and how to install our Marcoat. The first product we're going to install is our Marcoat ES Extreme Service. It's a 2-to-1 epoxy, 100% solids. This is the cartridge. You got the resin on one side, the hardener on the other. We use a 2-part caulking gun to push the caulk out through the pistons. We put on the mixing tube. The Marcoat goes up through, gets mixed, and comes out the other end. What we do now is we lay masking tape in one direction. So imagine running the tape all the way the length of the tiles, like this. Then the next day, when the material cures, we run it the opposite direction, across, and we'll just go right over it. And we lay the tape this way in the opposite direction. So you're going vertical one day, horizontal the next. Make a crisscross pattern. We're going to get ready now to load the caulking cartridge into the gun. They come with black tabs. We remove the tabs like this, and we will load the caulking tube into the gun. We screw on the mixing tube, and now we're going to load it into the gun. It's a 2-to-1, so you'll see the piston, large and small. Load it in, air-operated caulking gun. Pull the trigger, and the material will start coming through, getting mixed while it's in the tube. What we're going to do is we squirt out a little bit, and that's good. Now the material is completely mixed. Next, what we'll do, we're going to shoot it in the joints, run it along, as we go, and we stop when we get to the end. Then we can do the next line, which we will not do now. We just squirt it, and we do all the lines going in one direction. The next step is to take a 1-inch margin trowel and squeeze the material in to the joint. And any voids you fill. Go back and forth. Now you have an even, uniform flush line. And then you'll be doing the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then what we do is we will pick up the tape and we give it overnight to cure. We have a perfect joint. And then the next day, we're going to take the tape. This brown tape will be, imagine, coming out to here. And we're going to run the caulk in the next direction after it's cured 24 hours later. The Marcoat ES is designed for extreme service, that being mostly cook lines and dishwashing areas, wet areas. So it's a very high-end product, and you may not want to install it throughout the entire kitchen, but certainly in a cook line and certainly in a dishwashing area. The next material we're going to use is our Marcoat General Service. It's a 1-to-1 water washable epoxy, hardener, resin, 600 mils, 600 mils. We have custom colors. This one happens to be mocha. And we have our bag of sand that fills this entire kit. So it's 1 part resin, 1 part hardener, 1 part pigment, 1 part sand. What we're doing now, we're adding the pigment, full pigment cup, into the resin side. And we'll stir it to get our color. Thoroughly mix it, scraping the sides and the bottom till it's blended, all even and uniform. And now we mix part A and part B together, and we'll do this before we put the sand in. And then we add the sand. It's pre-measured. 1 bag of sand, it's a 9-pound bag. Goes with 1,200 milliliters of hardener and resin. And we thoroughly mix that. Now we're going to install the mixed Marcoat GS. It's just like doing regular epoxy grout. If you're used to using Laticrete, Mapei, or any other epoxy grouts, very similar. You've got a float, you got a sponge, you got some water with a little soap in there, and install it the same way. Marcoat General Service is good for areas that are not really subjected to extreme service, like a cook line or dishwashing area. So it's a less expensive material, but it's still very strong and durable, and designed to give years and years of performance in non-critical, non-wet areas. And coverage rate here is pretty much the same as regular standard epoxy grout, water washable epoxy grout. Okay, next step is going to be the cleanup. Use a Scotch-Brite pad, and typical cleanup for epoxy grout. Cure time, normal room temperature for this material, 3 to 5 hours. We've designed it to cure faster than most epoxy grouts that are out on the market. But we typically tell people keep it out of service for 24 hours if possible. And now the tile is pretty much cleaned. Just a couple of more swipes with a sponge and get all the residue off, and we'll be good to go. Again, 4 to 6 hours setup time. The next step is we're going to show how to cut out existing grout with a flex tuck point machine. We've got a diamond blade in there equal to the width of the joint. You can see that. Got a shroud over the blade, and we hook up a vacuum to this, turn the vacuum on, turn the blade on, and then we have a pointer right here. Keep the pointer in the center of the grout, and we'll move along and cut the grout out. So the grout has now been cut out. Basically, the depth is the thickness of the tile, 3/4 of an inch. And what we'll be doing now is using our Marcoat ES in the liquid form versus in the cartridge. The liquid form has got the viscosity of honey. The cartridge form has got the viscosity of peanut butter. So we're going to show how to use we call it our pour grout material. So we're going to squirt it literally in the joints, and it'll self-level. After he has cut everything out, you just saw the process to vacuum out the joints. Even if it's wet, slightly wet down here, which most kitchens will be, the Marcoat ES is a marine epoxy base, and it's designed to be used in a wet environment. So do not worry if the joints do contain some moisture. Next step is to open the kit for the Marcoat ES pour grout. It's a 2-to-1 mixture. We've got resin on one side, 600 milliliters, and we've got hardener on the other side that's colored. Doesn't say it on there, but it comes in a color. The hardener and resin get mixed together in a 900, it's 900 mils total. And over here we have built a manifold. We have empty cork cartridges. Once we mix the material, we're going to pour it into the cork cartridges, and then we cap them. We snip the ends, and we're going to squirt it in, and it'll be a self-leveling material. You always want to mix the hardener up before you pour it into the resin. Some of it may settle, some of the pigments. This is a 100% solids material. and you cannot use a sponge to wipe it down like you do with Marcoat GS. If you get any excess on the tile, the way you clean it off is with a rag with acetone. So we mix the hardener and the resin together thoroughly. Again, remember this is a 2-to-1. Normally we'll make a complete 900 ml kit, and 900 we'll get 3 tubes that are 300 milliliters each. Ready? Next, what we do after it's thoroughly mixed, we pour it into the empty cork cartridge. Again, one 900 ml kit will fill 3 of these units. Once it's filled, you don't fill it to the top all the way. You'll leave about 1.5 inches, and then we cap it, and we put it into a standard single component caulking gun. And we'll have to snip the tip. Small opening is sufficient. It runs out fairly quickly, and this is really a hand-held caulking gun that you have to go very slowly and let it find its own level. You don't want the material too warm. And what you want to make sure is you've got your end points, so the material is not going to flow any further. It's going to keep running out as you see it here. It'll run out. So if you're doing an area, you want to make sure you dam off an area if you're cutting out the grout. You can use foam, a piece of rubber. Again, this has got the viscosity of room temperature honey. And you just want to be careful not to get it on the tile surface itself. And if you do, again, acetone on a rag, take it right off. This is designed more for an existing restaurant where the tape will not stick on to the tile because of all the grease and wetness of the tile. I prefer using the material in the cartridge for a new install and using a rubber float to get a smooth, even finish. And what will happen if you don't dam off the ends, the material, you'll get a concave finish, and you'll have maybe 1/8 of an inch, and you won't have a complete flush line here. So you want to make sure you always have enough material and you're damming off areas so the material just can't keep running out on you. The hardest thing with this material is making sure you have it level and you don't let it sink down like it has over here, because it's running down this way. But by doing a contained area or damming off an area, the material can only run so far. And it's better to leave maybe a little bit of material on here than try to clean this off with a rag. Come back the next day with a razor blade, it'll scrape right off, it'll be fully cured. This material has got the exact same properties as the material in the cartridge for extreme service. Again, it's 100% solids versus a water washable epoxy. Whoever you have that installs this, it'd be good if they have a very good hand, like a painter does, a very steady hand. As you can see, the material can't run anymore, so it's at the right level. We've only cut so far, and he's just squirting in to fill in the areas now, to level it off. And the cure time on this, 4 to 6 hours at room temperature. And again, something like this you could wipe with a towel that has acetone on it. This is going to cure, it'll be at this level, it's nice and level now, and we didn't use the masking tape on this side. We're going to show you how to clean off some excess. So we got a little excess here, rag, acetone. This is still wet. Cleans right off, like it was never there. The final step, when we mix part A and part B, sometimes we get some air entrapment. You may see some tiny little bubbles here, air bubbles. We're going to show you how to degas the product. Use a propane torch, and you'll see how it degasses it, makes it perfectly smooth. One pass, pretty much sufficient. All gone, totally flush, uniform, no blemishes, no air bubbles, air pockets. When we're done.